Hi, Peppermint Patty group. So welcome back to another guided reading lesson. First of all, I just want to say you guys have been doing such a great job showing me all of the work that you've been doing on Seesaw, especially those graphic organizers that we've been doing after you read the book each week. So I've been really impressed with what you guys have been doing. So today we are going to do another word work activity. But our word work activity is going to be a little different than we've done before. We've done making words, we've done an analogy chart where we write the words on the different sides. But today we're going to do an activity called breaking words. So we'll do that in just a few minutes. And then we're going to read a book called Daisy's Airplane Trip. And so we'll read that book and we'll talk about it later on. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's get started with our new word work activity. It's called breaking words. So it's going to be a lot different than what we've done before. So you're going to have to listen really carefully. What I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and take these letters either off of your tray or out of your bag. Go ahead and get these letters ready. And I know it's already spelling a word, but I don't want you to say it yet. I just want you to get those letters and keep all of your other letters close by because we'll need to grab some other ones as we work through the lesson. But go ahead and take these letters out of your bag or off of your tray. And then whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and press play and we'll get started. All right, so let's do our breaking words activity. So what we're gonna do is exactly what it sounds like. We are gonna practice breaking words apart. So our first word, don't say it, but just look at our first word. I want you to look and see, where do we see our first vowel? The very first vowel that we see is that what? The A. Good. So what I want you to do is I want you to break the word apart into two different parts, but I want you to break it at the vowel. So you use both of your hands to break your word apart just like that. So you're going to break it at the vowel. Good. So now point to this part. What part does this say? Shh. Good. That hunk and chunk. Shh. What does this part say with that silent E on the end? Ache. Good. So put it together, or don't put it together yet. Say it again. Shh. Ache. Now take your hands and put it back together. And what's that word? Shake. Good. So let's try that one more time. So break it apart at the vowel. And then let's point to it and say those two parts. You ready? Shh. Ache. Now put it back together, and what word does it say? Shake. Very good, guys. All right, so now I want you to change the SH to FL. So remember, I said keep your other letters close by. So go ahead and find your letters. You can press the pause button if you need to, but I want you to change your SH to a FL. All right, so let's do the same thing. So I want you to use both of your hands and I want you to break the word apart at the vowel. So think about where are you going to break that apart? So take both of your hands and break your word apart and then point to each part and let's say it. You ready? Full ache. Do that one more time. Full ache. And then put it back together. And what does it say? Flake. Good job. All right, so now I want you to change the first letter to make the word Blake. Blake, like somebody's name could be Blake. So change the first letter to make the word Blake, and then press the pause button if you need to. All right, so let's try it again. I want you to break the word apart at the vowel. You ready? So we're gonna break it apart. And then let's point to each part and say it. You ready? Bull ache. Do it again. You ready? Bull ache. Let's put it together. And what word does it say? Blake. Very good, guys. All right, so now I want you to take a letter away to make the word bake. So think about what letter are you going to take away to make the word bake? So press the pause button if you need to. All right, so hopefully you took away that L. So we're going to do the same thing. I want you to break apart the word at the vowel. So remember, the vowel is always going to be the very first letter in that second part. So when you break it apart, you always want the very first vowel to be the first letter in that second part, okay? All right, you ready? Let's stretch it out and say these two parts. You ready? B, ache. Do it again. You ready? B, ache. And then we're going to put it back together. What word is it? Bake. Good. We're putting it all back together. All right, so now what I want you to do is don't use your letters. You may want to because they are really helpful when you're going to break those words apart. But I'm just going to write a word and I want you to see if you can read it. So kind of look at the two parts that you see. So not this word. Look at this word that I just wrote. So in your head, kind of break it apart. Don't actually make it. Just look at the word that I wrote. In your head, kind of break it apart at the vowel. And then what word does it say? Tell me. Brake. Yeah, like when I put on my brakes in my car, that's how we spell brake, like a car brake. Good. So we separated it, the BR and the AKE. So ache, and we put it back together and we see the word break. Very good. So I know that was a lot shorter than some of our other lessons, but breaking words is so important because you guys are really starting to work on a lot bigger words. And so we're going to kind of add on to what we did today. This was just kind of a short start, but we'll kind of add on and we'll work with even bigger words in the next few weeks when we do our breaking words activities. So the words will get bigger because you guys are getting to become such strong readers, and this is really going to help you when you go to look at a big word and be able to break it apart and figure out that word on your own, okay? So great job with our first breaking words lesson, and we'll do some more of these. So good job. Let's go ahead and take a break and then we'll read our book. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our book. It's called Daisy's Airplane Trip. And this story is about Daisy, and she goes on a trip with mom and dad on an airplane. And she is so excited until she finds out that she's going to have to ride in a bag. So we're going to kind of read to find out, do her feelings change? What happens in the story? And if her feelings do change, well, what happens in the story to make her feelings change? So that's going to be a big thing I want you to remember and think about while you're reading the story is how does Daisy feel at the beginning of the story? How does she feel in the middle of the story? And how does she feel at the end of the story? Because after you read your book, you're going to go back to Seesaw and you're going to tell me how her feelings changed. So let's go ahead and get started with our book. Okay, so one thing that I really want you guys to make sure that you are working on is making sure that whatever you're reading looks right. So we don't want to skip any words. We want to make sure that whatever we read actually looks like that word, even if it makes sense what we say. We still want to make sure that it looks right. So let me kind of show you an example of what I'm talking about. I want you to take a look at this very first sentence right here. And I'm going to read it and I want you to kind of look and see where does something not look right. So what I read is going to make sense, but I want you to see where does it not look right? Where does it not match with what I say? Okay? All right, so watch closely and listen to what I read. One day, Daisy saw a suitcase at the door. Well, does that make sense to say one day Daisy saw a suitcase at the door? Yeah, that makes sense, but what didn't look right? What do you think? If you need to, pause the video and kind of look at it. Listen again. One day, Daisy saw a suitcase at the door. What do you think? So hopefully you noticed that when I said at the very end, at the door, well, look at this word right here. Does that look like the word at? No. What I read made total sense, but it didn't look right. That word does not look like the word at. So I need to stop and I need to go back and see if I can figure out what that word is. So let me see what would make sense there. If I'm looking at the word, I see B and Y. Let's see. One day, Daisy saw a suitcase by the door. So now, does it make sense and it looks right? Yeah, it looks like the word by, and that makes sense. So be really careful when you're reading, because a lot of times you guys are doing a great job making sure that what you read makes sense. But I think you're focusing so much on that you're leaving words out, or you're saying the wrong word. Even though it does make sense, it just doesn't look right. So we want to be careful and make sure that it always looks right what we read. So make sure you're doing that as you read the rest of the book. All right, so let's talk about our characters' feelings in our story. And we've talked about characters' feelings before. And the whole reason that we want to talk about how a character feels is because it really helps us understand the story better. If we think about how their feelings are throughout the whole story and if they change, because a lot of times they will change. So I told you at the beginning of the story before we read that I wanted you to think about how Daisy felt throughout the story. And Daisy at the beginning of the story felt really what? She felt really excited to go on an airplane, but her friends might have felt a little differently, and that's okay. Characters a lot of times are going to feel differently in stories. So now I want you to think about, how does Jack feel about going on an airplane? And I want you to think about not only how he feels, but what words on this page told you how Jack feels about going on an airplane. So what words told you how he felt? And I want you to either just pause the video and think about it, or pause the video and go tell somebody that's close by, show them what you just read and tell them, explain to them how Jack feels in this story and how you know. Show them the words on the page that tell you how he felt. So remember, that's important because we want to understand our story even better. So take a second and do that. So let's talk a little bit more about making sure that what we read not only makes sense, but that it also looks right. So I want you to pay attention really closely to this sentence right here. And I'm going to read this sentence and I want you to think, where does it not look right? What did Miss Bell do that I shouldn't have done? Okay, so look at that sentence and see if you can figure out what doesn't look right. Okay, all right, so just listen. Daisy could see planes outside. She was very excited. So did what I read make sense? Yeah, it makes sense to say Daisy could see planes outside. She was very excited. But what did I do? I left out 2 words, and those words are right there. So I need to make sure that I read them if those words are right there. So let me go back and see, because I want to stop because I know it doesn't look right. And let me see if I can go back and make sure that everything looks right that I read. Daisy could see planes outside the windows. She was very excited. So now, does it make sense and it looks right? Yes. So always make sure that you don't leave out any words. Even if it makes sense, if it doesn't look right and it looks like there's words there that you aren't reading, I want you to stop and go back and read it again. It is totally fine for you to go back and read something again. I want you to do that because I would rather you not leave any words out and go back and reread than to just keep reading and leave words out. Because sometimes it makes sense, and then sometimes we might be missing something really important, and we want to make sure that we're reading correctly. So always pay attention. Does it look right? If it doesn't, what are you going to do? Stop and go back and read it again and see if you can figure it out. Good job, you guys. So I hope you enjoyed our story about Daisy and her going on her first airplane trip. Well, I don't know if it was her first, but an airplane trip. She was excited. But now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Seesaw, and you guys are going to tell me, how did Daisy feel throughout the story? Because her feelings definitely changed. She felt one way in the beginning, her feelings changed in the middle part of the story, and then at the end, she kind of went back to feeling a certain way. So when you get to Seesaw, your graphic organizer is going to look just like the graphic organizer that we did when we retold the story. But today, instead of retelling the story, I want you to tell me about Daisy's feelings. So here's the thing. I don't want you to just tell me one word. I don't want you to just say excited, worried. I want you to put it in a complete sentence. So I want you to say, in the beginning, Daisy felt blank. And I'll give you some words to choose from when you get to Seesaw. And then when you get to the middle part, I want you to say, in the middle of the story, Daisy felt blank. So I want you to put it in a complete sentence. Don't just tell me one word. And I also want you to see if you can explain your thinking. So if Daisy's feelings changed in the middle of the story, well, can you add to that and tell me, why did her feelings change? What happened in the story to make her feelings change? So that's just a little challenge that I want to give you guys because I know you can do it. So I want you to put it in a complete sentence, how she felt in the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story. And I want you to tell me, why did her feelings change? So what happened to make her feelings change throughout the story? I hope you guys liked our story. You guys did awesome, especially with our new word work activity. And I hope you enjoyed our book. I will see you back here next week.